Hey everybody, welcome to a series of, I guess you could call them tutorials or informational sessions on some specific mechanics in Pacific War, some aspects of the game that I wish I had more knowledge of before I started playing. I think for me it was kind of hit or miss. In just trying some things out and then missing some things that I should have known about, and then rereading and then trying again, and then somebody pointed out something else that I missed, and so that by trial and error, I mean, it was fun going through the process in a way, but this is something that I wish had been out there right away. And it's not so much, I'm not going through engagement scenarios and in that regard. I'm just going to peel out some of the distinct things you have to do as a player in this game, and try to get down to the nitty-gritty and hopefully include things that I know I missed the first time around and the second time around, so that you don't have to. So it can be, you know, I guess this is meant for people maybe starting out, but also maybe you've tried a little bit of the game and you're kind of looking back and double checking to see if maybe you missed something as well. But that's how I'm going to approach it. So first up is search, and it's a biggie because you basically, in this game, you have to search and detect everything in order to attack it. Now, it comes with a little caveat, and I'll start off right away. Something that I missed the first time through, even though it's very clear on the search chart and in the rules. Definitely you need to read the highlighted boxes in the Pacific War rules. They really help. So the caveat is this: you need to detect anything in order to attack it with a strike. But in this game, all land forces, ships in harbor, anything that's represented by a force marker like this, not a task force that's out to sea, but a force marker, all that is automatically detected. It's considered detective. And it says it right on the search chart, which I didn't see the first time. So you can attack, you know something's there, you can send an air mission to attack it, even though you haven't searched for it specifically. Once you get there, you'll find out what's there if you're able to attack that hex. But searching for bases is, it's not something you have to do unless you want more specific information, and that's what the search chart is for. So everything has to be detected. How do you detect it? You use different type of search entities. There's actually 4. The first one is long-range air. Those are the most effective in the sense of getting out the farthest range. They're both Japanese and the Allied side are range 8. The second is any type of FT or B air unit. Those are the next best things to search with. They could be carrier planes, they could be land-based air. The third best thing to search with outside of your hex is, the only other option is spotter planes, these 2 columns. And spotter plane is simply that little, if you have a task force with a ship that's got the little plane marker in the middle bottom, then you've got a spotter plane. Okay, you can use all those to search, and those are the only ones, the planes are the only ones that can search outside of a hex, which makes sense because these are big hexes. Then the fourth thing you can search with is any unit that's in a hex. For instance, if I've got infantry units in this hex, other plane units sitting there, ships at harbor, whatever, or in this case, task force, as other task forces or planes come into that hex, you can search in the hex proper. You don't need to have any planes. You're just searching with the units that are there. And that's what this middle circle is. Some people don't. I know there was someone, maybe a couple people that have redone these charts to make them look a little bit more, I don't know, maybe compact and more in a table format rather than looking like this. But when I first pulled this out, and it's been so long since I played the original that I was looking at it and going, I'm not sure, how do I get this out? Especially when I was looking at this circle down here. But it really is quite elegant, and I like the look of it, the way it's set up right now. Notice, I've talked about this in other videos, but if you play solitaire, you need to do this. Copy the Allied and the Japanese search chart back to back, and you won't be having to use both of these big fold out player's aids. Just have that really handy, okay? Quick note too, some people in my review commented, and I'm glad that I was able to help because it threw me again the first time I played. And that is Japanese and Allied. This is why you do that. They are different search charts. There are subtle differences, but they're kind of important. The Japanese, generally, searching outside of the hex is more effective. Long-range air is identical, both day and night. So if you have long-range air, Japanese or Allied, these probabilities are going to be the same. Where it starts to get a little bit different is FTB air units. Japanese are better, both in the range, the fact that they can do night. Allied cannot do that. Same with spotter planes from the naval units. So this spotter plane for the US cannot search as far as the Japanese spotter planes. And even the Japanese spotter planes can go one hex out during night turns. Allied can't do that at all. So there's a big difference between the two. And then within the search hex itself, for air only, I think because of the technology that the Allied side had for radar and whatnot, the Japanese side is 60% chance of searching and detecting an air unit in the hex that they're searching in proper. So if a plane's coming into this task force hex and I searched so I can alert some air units, that's when you roll on here. The Allied side is 10% better, 70% chance for air only. All the rest of these are identical on either side. Okay, there's the differences for the two sides. Okay, what do I search with? Well, we've just talked about the three different, technically four because of searching within the hex, but the three different type of air units. Obviously, if everything's the same as far as range, let's put this here. Let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put that, and then put this here. Okay. It's obvious that in this situation, what unit I'm going to use to search for this task force. It's going to be the long-range air because that has the best chance for success. In this case, the spotter plane can't even search that far, but if everything's equal, you're going to go with the long-range air. Then if I don't have the long-range air, you're going to go with the FTB unit, and then the spotter plane. If it's not equal, then you have to take a look at the chart. Be very careful as you look at it, because in some cases the spotter plane is not, because of the distance, it's not going to be as good. So just be really familiar with this baby, and then you'll know what your best chance for success is. That's important. So let's say I use it FTB. It's 3 hexes away. It's the allied side. 1, 2, 3. I need to roll a 3 or less. 0, 1, 2, or 3. I got a 3. That's red. So you just look over and double check to see you've detected it, so I can flip this and I can attack it. But because it's red, I don't know as much about it. There could be aircraft carriers in there. That could be a couple of destroyers. I have no idea. So the Japanese only has to tell me within 50%. There's ships there, but within 50% of the truth. So if there are 4 ships there, I could say there were 6, or I could say there were 3, or I could say 4 or 5, but it has to be within 50% plus or minus of what actually is there. And I thought it was interesting that someone actually wrote up some optimal choices for the person who's being searched and what they should say depending on how many ships they have and what kind of information they should give to the enemy when they've detected them. If you have blue, you can just see the number of capital ships there, number of non-capital, and whether they're aircraft carriers. That's pretty, I mean, if you get blue, that's going to be pretty good information. So you can better decide whether you want to attack. If there are carriers there, that's going to be a prime target. If there are not, and there's a lot of capital ships, you may want to avoid that task force if you don't have anything to compete with those big guns. And then green obviously is the best, and you get to know all the details. You don't know the exact ship names, but you know the type of units and exactly how many there are. Notice that we talked about forces, land forces in port, etc. on land. They're automatically detected, but by searching there, you can find out exactly what's there before you do any kind of attack. So that's a good reason to search a hex, a force hex. How do you search? Okay, we understand about rolling on the table, or maybe I should rephrase that. When do you search? Okay, 2 big differences. If you look at the major chart, whether it's battle, campaign, or strategic, they all have these 2 phases. And that's the operation player contact phase, the reaction player contact phase. During that time, there are going to be, typically, more often than not, almost always, there will be task forces moving. During that movement phase, so let's say I'm operational player Japanese, before they start the movement, I can search in this hex or any other places. I move 1 hex, I can search again. I move another hex, I can search again. I move another hex, I can search again, etc. You get the idea. Every time you do one of these increments on the naval movement track, this is used for contact phase movement. So every time I'm moving into a next box, I can search both the operational player and the reaction player can do searches at every one of those moments. And you can search every time if I move a hex and another task force doesn't move, I could search for that task force even though it didn't move. It's another impulse on here. So every time an impulse changes, you can search. That's a difference in contact phase to the battle cycle movement phases. We'll get to that in a second. So searching happens quite a bit, and that is one of the ways that you can stop a task force from moving if you've detected it in certain intelligence levels. So that searching becomes very, very important. And the other part of that in searching during the contact phase, if I've searched and discovered that, say the Japanese has searched and discovered that, they stay detected through the entire first battle cycle. That's really important. So if you get a detection there, that's going to really influence what happens in the first battle cycle. If you don't detect it, you're going to have to do that detection in the battle cycle movement. In terms of battle cycle and searching, that happens during the advantage movement phase. I'll pull back here. And it happens during the disadvantage movement phase. So advantage phase, let's again pretend we're Japanese. Before I move that task force, everybody has a chance to search. Every time I move, and there's only going to be 2 possible movements, movement segments for task forces, I can search again. Both sides can search again. And then the second movement impulse, you can search again. Now, here's the big difference between battle cycle and operation contact and reaction player contact phase. I can only, in the battle cycle movement, for the advantage movement, and that's separate from the disadvantage movement, but each of those movement segments, you can only search once for a task force. If I'm here and I've tried searching for the task force, regardless of what unit tried to do it, I can't search for it again the rest of the movement phase. That's it. So be very careful of when you're actually going to try for that. So I've moved my advantage movement, I've searched, maybe I didn't detect it, and then it's disadvantage movement and the allied player is moving. I can search now again for that, but only once during that movement segment. That's a really important distinction. It's, again, something that I did not play properly the first time I did it. So I think that's it for searching. If I missed something or didn't cover anything, just drop a comment and I'll try to fix it. But those are the things that I especially needed to understand better when I first played. So I'm hoping that helps at least one person out there, if you're watching and listening and looking at some of the details I wrote in. So hope that helps. That is search in Pacific War. Okay, one addendum to my search video, and this is a biggie in terms of campaign and strategic scenarios. The first time I played a campaign scenario, I made sure I double-checked the search rules, and this is the most important thing that I found out, and that I was able to utilize, and that is you do not have to have, you do not have to be activated in order to search. So, and I'll tell you why this makes sense in a second, but let's say in strategic and campaign scenarios, you have to pay command points in order to activate units. Well, if I'm not going to move my long range air from this hex and use it for, move it around during the particular operation, there's no, see, it costs 1 point to activate it, but in reality, that's kind of wasted, because if it's on its inactivated side, I can search all I want with this plane, and that goes for any plane unit, or any unit in a base hex. I could have a bunch of infantry in a land hex, and they're flipped, they're not activated, and somebody comes in to attack with planes. I don't have to activate those units to search. And even more important, I don't have to activate plane units to search. So they actually could alert even though they're not activated. It's basically they're there, they're not going to do any kind of missions outside of the hex, but if they detect some strike coming in, they can search, and if they detect the air mission coming in, they can alert and then throw up their cap if they need to. So that's an important distinction when you're doing campaign and battle scenarios for searching.